Flight attendant forces elderly black woman off the plane, only to find out she owns the airline. Imagine boarding a luxurious flight filled with excitement for a long-awaited reunion, only to face unexpected hostility. This is a story of resilience in the face of prejudice, the power of dignity, and a transformation that reshaped an entire company. Watch as the narrative unfolds, showing how one act of injustice led to consequences far beyond anyone's expectations. What would you do if you were in her situation? Have you ever witnessed or experienced unfair treatment? Let me know where you are watching from. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments section below. And let's explore this inspiring and powerful true story. Margaret Lewis, a retired schoolteacher in her late 70s, was a woman of grace and quiet resilience. Decades of dedication to her community, her family, and her students had shaped her into someone who carried herself with dignity, no matter the situation. This trip marked a special milestone for Margaret. It was her first flight in years, and her first opportunity to visit her great-grandchildren in person. The anticipation filled her with both joy and a touch of nervous excitement. Margaret's son, understanding her need for comfort, had booked her a ticket with Astra Airways, a premium airline known for its luxury and care. He wanted to make sure his mother traveled in ease and safety. Clad in her modest yet elegant attire, a charcoal gray dress, cream cardigan, and her beloved pearl necklace, Margaret exuded a timeless charm. Her silver curls, neatly styled, peeked out from beneath her small hat as she patiently waited in line at the bustling terminal. As Margaret's boarding group was called, she stepped forward with measured grace, her warm smile aimed at the gate agent. However, the gate agent's strained tone and brief hesitation as they scanned her ticket hinted at an unspoken judgment. Margaret, accustomed to such subtle microaggressions, brushed it off and walked down the jet bridge toward the aircraft. The interior of the plane shimmered with polished luxury, a world far removed from her everyday life. As she reached her assigned seat, 2A, Margaret admired the spacious cabin. Her movements were slow and deliberate, a mix of age and unfamiliarity with the setting. Just as she was about to stow her modest carry-on in the overhead compartment, a sharp, clipped voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, ma'am," came the voice of Lisa Carter, the lead flight attendant. Her tone carried an air of authority, but her words dripped with irritation. Margaret turned to see a tall, impeccably dressed woman with an unreadable expression, professional but cold. "Who is this? Is this your seat?" Lisa asked, her eyes narrowing as if doubting Margaret's presence in the premium section. "Yes, it is," Margaret replied calmly, holding up her boarding pass. Lisa leaned in to scrutinize the ticket, her lips tightening before giving a curt nod. "Fine. Please stow your bag quickly so we can keep the boarding process moving." Margaret, unbothered by the rudeness, attempted to lift her bag into the overhead compartment. Her hands trembled slightly, not from frailty but from the nervous energy of being in an unfamiliar environment. Before she could manage, a kind voice from behind her broke the tension. "I've got this, ma'am," said a middle-aged man seated nearby. With a reassuring smile, he effortlessly placed Margaret's bag into the compartment. "Thank you, young man," Margaret said warmly, her gratitude shining through her voice. The small act of kindness brought a smile to Margaret's face, but it didn't go unnoticed by Lisa, whose expression soured. "Let's not hold up the line," she said sharply, her voice loud enough to draw attention. As Margaret settled into her seat, she noticed fleeting glances from nearby passengers, some curious, others indifferent. Lisa, however, continued to direct cold, disapproving glares at Margaret. When Margaret pressed the call button a few minutes later to request water for her medication, Lisa's irritation only grew. "Is this really necessary?" Lisa said as she arrived, her tone clipped and her posture stiff. Before Margaret could respond, a small voice interrupted. "You can have my water, ma'am," said a little girl across the aisle, holding out a half-full bottle with a bright smile. Margaret's heart melted at the gesture. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice filled with warmth. The girl's mother beamed with pride, gently patting her daughter's hand, but the exchange seemed to inflame Lisa further. Her actions became more abrupt, her tone more condescending, as though Margaret's presence alone was a disruption to her routine. The tension in the cabin grew as passengers began to notice Lisa's treatment of Margaret. Whispered comments and exchanged glances made it clear that others were aware of the unfairness. Still, Margaret maintained her composure, her calm and dignified demeanor unwavering despite the hostility. So, unbeknownst to Lisa, Margaret was not just any passenger. She was about to become the catalyst for an extraordinary series of events that would transform not only the flight, but also the airline itself. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Lisa Carter's behavior toward Margaret Lewis became increasingly hostile. What started as subtle irritation soon escalated into outright mockery and public humiliation. Margaret, seated calmly in her assigned premium seat, pressed the call button once more to request assistance with a blanket. Her hands felt cold, and she wanted to be comfortable for the long flight. Lisa approached, her face visibly annoyed, and spoke loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Are you sure you're in the right seat, ma'am?" Lisa asked, narrowing her eyes as she looked Margaret up and down. "This section is reserved for premium passengers." Margaret, her voice calm and steady, replied, "I'm in the correct seat. My ticket says 2A. She held up her boarding pass, which Lisa snatched from her hand to examine. Lisa's lips tightened as she realized Margaret was, indeed, in the right seat. Rather than admit her mistake, she responded dismissively, "Well, just make sure you don't inconvenience the staff again." The passengers around Margaret exchanged uneasy glances. A young woman across the aisle leaned over and whispered to her, "Don't let her get to you. You're doing nothing wrong." Margaret smiled softly, her composure intact, but the weight of Lisa's hostility was evident. When Margaret requested a cup of water a few moments later, Lisa rolled her eyes and muttered sarcastically, "What is this, a charity drive?" She then turned to a fellow flight attendant and said loudly, "Apparently, we're running a full-service hotel now." The remarks were met with disapproving murmurs from nearby passengers. One man in a business suit, seated behind Margaret, leaned forward and said firmly, "That's uncalled for. Show some respect." Lisa ignored the comment, but her actions grew sharper. She avoided making eye contact with Margaret, delivered her requests grudgingly, and made a point of prioritizing other passengers' needs over hers. When a child accidentally bumped into Margaret's seat, Lisa turned back and scolded her. "You should be more careful," she said, as though Margaret were at fault. The breaking point came when Lisa approached Margaret once again, this time with a forced smile that barely concealed her irritation. "Ma'am," she said loudly, drawing the attention of everyone nearby, "I need to verify your ticket again. Are you absolutely sure you belong in this section?" Margaret's expression remained serene as she calmly held out her boarding pass. "Yes, I belong here," she said softly. Lisa took the ticket, scrutinized it, and handed it back with a curt nod. Instead of apologizing, she turned to the passengers around them and said, "Let's make sure everyone is seated where they should be." The statement was clearly meant to single Margaret out, and whispers of disapproval rippled through the cabin. Despite the humiliation, Margaret maintained her dignity. She adjusted her posture, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and gazed out the window. Her quiet strength began to inspire those around her. The young girl who had earlier offered Margaret her water leaned over to her mother and whispered, "Why is that lady being so mean?" Her mother gave Margaret a reassuring smile and gently patted her daughter's hand. Other passengers started speaking up as well. "This is unacceptable," one man said, shaking his head. Another passenger, a woman seated a few rows back, called out, "She hasn't done anything wrong." The support from those around her began to shift the atmosphere in the cabin. Lisa, realizing she was losing control of the narrative, became visibly flustered. Her attempts to demean Margaret were not only failing, but also drawing attention to her own unprofessional behavior. Margaret, ever poised, met the situation with grace. She thanked the passengers who spoke up, her voice steady and warm. "I appreciate your kindness," she said. "I'm fine. Let's not let this ruin our trip." Her response only solidified the passengers' admiration for her and their growing disdain for Lisa's actions. Little did Lisa know, this confrontation was just the beginning of a chain of events that would not only expose her behavior, but also bring about consequences she could never have anticipated. The situation reached a boiling point when Lisa Carter, visibly frustrated by Margaret Lewis's calm demeanor and the passengers' growing support, decided to escalate the conflict. In a move that shocked everyone aboard, Lisa approached Margaret with an air of exaggerated authority. "Ma'am, Lisa said loudly, ensuring that everyone in the cabin could hear. "I'm afraid your behavior is disrupting the flight. You've pressed the call button repeatedly and have made unreasonable demands. We cannot proceed with you on board." Gasps echoed through the cabin. A man seated nearby stood up, visibly angered. "What are you talking about? She hasn't done anything wrong," he protested. Lisa ignored him, signaling to another flight attendant to summon airport security. Margaret, seated quietly, looked up at Lisa, her expression calm yet resolute. "I haven't caused any disruption," she said softly. "I've only asked for basic assistance." Lisa, however, doubled down. "Your behavior is unacceptable and we cannot continue to serve you on this flight," she declared, her voice cold and final. As security officers arrived to escort Margaret off the plane, passengers began voicing their outrage. "This is wrong," one woman shouted. "She's done nothing but sit quietly," another added. Even the young girl who had earlier offered Margaret her water turned to her mother, wide-eyed. "Why are they making her leave?" she asked innocently. Margaret, maintaining her composure, stood up slowly. Turning to the passengers who had supported her, she offered a faint smile. "Thank you for your kindness," she said softly. "I'll be fine." "Alec?" The officers escorted her off the plane, but the murmurs of discontent and indignation among the passengers only grew louder. As Margaret entered the terminal, she retrieved her phone and made a call. Her voice, calm but tinged with emotion, resonated with the same quiet strength she had displayed on the plane. "Marcus," she said when her son answered, "I've been removed from the flight. The attendant said I was causing a disruption." On the other end of the line, Marcus Dillard froze. As the CEO of Astra Airways, he was not only shocked, but deeply angered. "What do you mean, removed?" he asked, his voice low and controlled, though brimming with restrained fury. Margaret hesitated, not wanting to upset him, but she explained the situation clearly. "The flight attendant didn't like the way I looked, I suppose," she said. "She claimed I was disruptive, but I didn't argue. I just left." The line went silent for a moment before Marcus spoke again, his tone resolute. "Stay where you are, Mom. I'll handle this." Within minutes, Marcus was on another call, this time to Claire Reynolds, the airline's senior operations manager. "Claire," he said sharply, "I need a full report on Flight 612 immediately. A passenger was unjustly removed, and I want to know why." Claire, sensing the gravity of the situation, responded quickly. "Who was the passenger, sir?" "My mother," Marcus replied, his voice cold and direct. Claire's breath caught. "Your mother?" she stammered, already pulling up the flight's details. "Yes," Marcus said. "Margaret Lewis. She was removed without cause by a flight attendant named Lisa Carter. I want passenger testimonies, video evidence, and Lisa's entire personnel file on my desk within the hour. Notify the ground crew I'm heading to the airport now." The airline's operations team sprang into action, gathering reports from passengers and reviewing security footage. Meanwhile, Marcus arrived at the airport, his expression a mix of professionalism and barely contained anger. He met his mother in the VIP lounge, where she sat calmly, sipping a cup of tea. "Marcus," she greeted him with a small smile, "you didn't need to come all this way." "Yes, I did," he replied, sitting beside her. "This isn't just about you, Mom. This is about how we treat people. No one should experience what you just did." As the reports rolled in, the picture became clear. Lisa had not only singled Margaret out unfairly, but had also escalated the situation unnecessarily, disregarding the protests of passengers who had witnessed her behavior. Marcus wasted no time. Lisa Carter was immediately removed from duty and detained for questioning upon the flight's arrival. In a meeting with Marcus, her attempts to defend her actions fell flat. "I was just following protocol," she insisted weakly. "No," Marcus said, his voice firm. "What you did was not protocol, it was prejudice." Lisa was handed a termination notice on the spot, her actions deemed unprofessional and discriminatory. Meanwhile, Marcus issued a public statement addressing the incident. "At Astra Airways, we hold ourselves to the highest standards of professionalism and respect. The behavior exhibited on Flight 612 does not reflect our values, and we are taking immediate action to ensure this never happens again." The story didn't end there. Margaret's experience would soon spark a transformation within the airline, one that would place her at the center of lasting change. The fallout for Lisa Carter was swift and severe. Upon the arrival of Flight 612, Lisa was immediately summoned for questioning by the airline's senior management. Marcus Dillard, the CEO of Astra Airways, confronted her directly. His typically composed demeanor was replaced by a cold, steely resolve. "Miss Carter," Marcus began, his tone measured yet firm, "your behavior today was not only unprofessional, but also discriminatory and cruel. This airline has no room for such actions." Lisa, visibly nervous, attempted to defend herself. "I was just following protocol," she said weakly. She was being disruptive, pressing the call button unnecessarily and slowing down the boarding process. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "You thought wrong," he replied sharply. "Your actions went beyond protocol. You singled her out based on her appearance, humiliated her publicly, and escalated the situation unnecessarily. That is prejudice, not professionalism." With that, Marcus handed her a termination notice on the spot. "You are no longer an employee of Astra Airways," he stated firmly. Security escorted Lisa out of the airport, her head hanging low, as passengers who had witnessed the incident watched in silence. But the consequences for Lisa didn't end there. As the story of Margaret's mistreatment spread online, the public backlash was immediate and intense. Passengers shared videos of the incident, and headlines such as, "Elderly woman humiliated on flight airline, airline CEO takes action," began trending on social media. Lisa became the center of a media storm, with her name and actions dissected across news outlets and social platforms. As public outrage grew, old social media posts surfaced, revealing troubling views on race and social class. While not directly related to the incident, these posts further painted Lisa as someone unfit for a position of service and trust. Desperate to salvage her reputation, Lisa issued a public statement, claiming her actions had been misunderstood and citing the pressures of her job as a flight attendant. "I was under stress and simply trying to maintain order," she wrote. However, her defense fell flat. The public, already angered, dismissed her apology as insincere. Attempts to find new employment proved futile. The stigma of her actions followed her, leaving her professionally and socially ostracized. Lisa's downfall stood as a stark reminder of the consequences of prejudice and mistreatment, while Margaret's dignity and the airline's swift response set a new standard for accountability and respect. The story of Margaret Lewis did not end with her removal from the plane. In fact, it was only the beginning of a profound transformation within Astra Airways. Recognizing the depth of his mother's wisdom, resilience, and grace, Marcus Dillard invited Margaret to take on a leadership role within the company. Her presence would become the cornerstone of a new era for the airline. Margaret, initially hesitant, accepted the position with the same humility and determination that had defined her life. "If I can make even one person's experience better, it will be worth it," she said. One of Margaret's first acts as a leader was to overhaul the company's training programs. She spearheaded mandatory inclusivity and sensitivity training for all employees, from flight attendants to senior executives. "Respect and dignity are not optional, they are fundamental," she stated during her first address to the airline staff. Margaret also established a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. Employees were encouraged to report incidents without fear of retaliation, and new procedures ensured accountability at every level. "We are not just flying people from one place to another," Margaret emphasized. "We are shaping their experience and making a statement about how we value them as individuals." Margaret's vision extended beyond internal policies. She launched several initiatives aimed at increasing diversity within the aviation industry. Through partnerships with community organizations, Astra Airways began offering scholarships to underrepresented groups pursuing careers in aviation, from pilots to engineers. "We need to ensure that everyone, regardless of their background, has a chance to thrive," Margaret said. "This isn't just about representation. It's about building a stronger, more inclusive industry." The scholarship program quickly gained traction, with aspiring aviators from diverse communities enrolling in training programs sponsored by Astra Airways. The initiative not only opened doors for countless individuals, but also solidified the airline's reputation as a pioneer in fostering diversity. Margaret's story resonated far beyond the airline. News outlets and social media platforms celebrated her as a symbol of dignity and resilience. Her quiet strength in the face of adversity became an inspiration to many, and her leadership demonstrated how one person's determination could create lasting change. Margaret remained grounded throughout the media frenzy. "This isn't about me," she said in an interview. "It's about making sure that no one else has to endure what I did. It's about creating a better future for everyone." Under Margaret's guidance, Austria Airways underwent a remarkable transformation. Customer satisfaction ratings soared as passengers began to notice the difference in how they were treated. Employees, too, reported higher morale and a renewed sense of purpose. The airline also launched a marketing campaign celebrating its commitment to fairness and equality. Advertisements featured testimonials from passengers and employees, highlighting how Austria Airways had become a beacon of positive change in the industry. This work enthusiast described the engagement experience at pilot training and said, "Wow." Margaret's influence extended to every corner of the company. She held regular town hall meetings with employees, listened to their concerns, and implemented changes based on their feedback. Her presence at community events and aviation conferences further solidified the airline's reputation as a leader in diversity and inclusion. Margaret's leadership left an indelible mark not only on Austria Airways, but also on the broader aviation industry. Her efforts inspired other airlines to adopt similar policies and initiatives, creating a ripple effect that reshaped the industry's culture. As Margaret reflected on her journey, she remained humble. "I didn't set out to change the world," she said during a press conference. "I just wanted to stand up for what was right. If my actions have inspired others to do the same, then I'm grateful." Margaret's transformation of Austria Airways was not just a victory for one airline. It was a testament to the power of resilience, dignity, and the belief that change is always possible. Under her guidance, Austria Airways became more than an airline. It became a symbol of hope, fairness, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Margaret Lewis's journey is a powerful reminder of the strength of dignity and the transformative power of standing up for what's right. What began as an act of injustice, a blatant display of prejudice, became the catalyst for a profound change that reshaped an entire company and inspired countless individuals. Through her resilience and grace, Margaret showed that even in the face of discrimination, maintaining one's composure can turn adversity into opportunity. Her story highlights the importance of treating everyone with respect and fairness, no matter their appearance, background, or circumstances. It also underscores how leadership grounded in empathy and inclusion can drive meaningful change. But this isn't just Margaret's story. It's a call for all of us to reflect on how we treat others and how we respond when we witness unfairness. Diane's actions served as a cautionary tale, while Margaret's response became a beacon of hope and progress. Now, we want to hear from you. How did you feel about Diane's behavior? Were you inspired by Margaret's calm and dignified approach? Have you ever witnessed or experienced something similar? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going about how we can create a more respectful and inclusive world. If you found Margaret's story inspiring, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more real-life narratives, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, we can share stories that matter and inspire change. Thank you for watching, and remember, every act of kindness, every moment of standing up for what's right can make a difference. Until next time, take care and treat each other with dignity and respect.